When we are reading, we often encounter words that we're unfamiliar to us. This happens to everyone, whether we are reading for enjoyment, for learning, for doing something new. One of the things that I do when this happens is to reread the sentence and the paragraph to see if I can figure out what it means. What are some of the other things that we can do when we encounter words that we don't know? Here I expect the students to talk about some of the things that they can do, such as asking someone what the word means, looking up the word in the dictionary, looking at the word to see if we can figure out if we know what part of it means. These are some of the things I expect them to answer. Today we're going to learn new words. We're going to learn some new vocabulary words from our book, Don't Look Behind You, that we're reading for our English class. When we read for fun or for anything, it's important that we identify and understand the new words so we can better understand what we're reading. So yesterday in class, we went ahead and we looked at chapter 5 and we identified words that we don't exactly know what they mean. And today we're going to share those words. So what I want everyone first to do is to write down on a Post-it note these words that you don't know. So we're going to spend a few minutes and look through and identify some of the words that you don't know. Once the students have done this, we're going to take those words and we're going to put them up on the bulletin or on the whiteboard. And if the word is already up there, just go ahead and put your Post-it note on top of the other Post-it note. This will show us that we're not the only ones who don't know what a word means. And sometimes lots of people don't know what the word means. So we're going to use that today. Now, once we've identified these words and we have all these words up there, what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can figure out what this word means. Now, the first word we're going to use is one that I have identified, and it is one of the ones that most people miss. And this word is reluctant. And we find this on page 51 of our text. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the paragraph where we find this word and see if that can give us a little bit of understanding of what the word means, what reluctant means. So this is on page 51, and someone has just knocked at the hotel door. April has looked out, and she sees this woman there, and she's not very familiar with her. She doesn't recognize her, and there are a lot of things that are kind of unsettling to her. Some things that she doesn't quite know what to think about this person. So when Bram, her brother, asks her, "What's the matter? Why are you still standing there and not opening the door?" basically. This is April's response. "Nothing's wrong," I told him, feeling like an idiot. Still, I continued to hold the door, not liking to appear foolish, yet oddly reluctant to open it the rest of the way. I wasn't able to pinpoint what was disturbing me and finally decided that it had to be the woman's eyes. I'd heard people use the term black in regard to eye color, but usually when you look closely at someone whose eyes were described as black, you discovered that they were actually a very dark brown. This woman's eyes did not fall into that category. They were literally black, so the pupils were lost in the irises, and they dominated the rest of her face completely. Okay, so in this is the beginning of the paragraph is where we find the word reluctant. Still, I continued to hold the door, not liking to appear foolish, yet oddly reluctant to open it the rest of the way. So we decide that April isn't real excited about opening the door. She's almost a little bit afraid of opening the door. And so we can come up with this definition of reluctant based on what we've read in the story. And it's unwilling and hesitant to do something, doesn't want to do something. Now, in order to identify what part of speech this is, we have to look at the sentence a little more closely. And we say that I continued to hold the door. I is April. Not liking to appear foolish, so she doesn't want to seem foolish, and that's an adjective describing her, yet oddly reluctant. So that kind of describes her as well. So what kind of words, what do we call the part of speech where It describes someone. This is basically an adjective. And we're going to review this with this class because they struggle with these parts of speech. So because reluctant describes the person speaking, which is April, we know that it's describing a noun. Words that describe nouns are called adjectives. So we know that our definition is unwilling and hesitant to do something, doesn't want to do something, and this is an adjective. So we know that reluctant is an adjective. We've also identified where we found it in the story, and we've used it in the sentence. And on the back of our card, this is based on the Freyer model, I write the quote. So that way I can refer back to it, and it gives a good example of how the word is used in a sentence. We can also write on the back, if we'd like to, different sentences about reluctant, using the word reluctant. So, based on the Freyer model, one of the other things that we're going to look at is examples or synonyms. So we're going to use some other words that could mean reluctant. So we talk about that with the class. Whenever you don't want to do something, what are some of the other words we can use to just, pulled off the wrong one. So I'm get from doing it backwards. So it's a little bit different using the video. I'm struggling with that. So here are some, we have hesitant, opposed to, unwilling, resisting, grudging, against. These are all things that we don't really want to do something. To show an example, one of the things I did in class was to talk about and demonstrate that there's a big loud noise on the other side of the classroom door. And I rush to the door, and then I'm kind of reluctant to open the door because I'm a little bit afraid of what I'm going to find on the other side of it. So I demonstrate to them reluctance, being reluctant to do something. And they liked that. They laughed about that. And up here on the card, when we talk about characteristics or pictures, since I'm not very good at drawing, I write about when I was reluctant to open the door whenever I heard a noise on the outside. So I gave an example of when I was reluctant to do something. And we also talked about it in class and talk about how you can be reluctant to do something. In order to emphasize this, one of the things we also talk about are our non-examples or our antonyms. We have synonyms and we have antonyms. And antonyms are things that mean opposite or not what we're talking about. And so if I was looking at non-examples or antonyms, I'm looking at being eager or excited or enthusiastic or willing or ready. April was definitely not any of these things whenever she was ready to open the door to this stranger on the other side. Once we have established this, students can use these cards. These are great vocabulary cards to study the word and to use it as a resource if they encounter the word again. This makes a great resource for them to fall back on. Some of the students prefer this method because they can write a lot of information on this card. It's also a good way to study. For example, use them like flashcards. The other alternative we have is the other graphic organizer for this exercise is where we have the words listed on a page. And we're going to go ahead and we look at the word where we find it. Let me see if I can show. Where is reluctant? There we have reluctant. It shows what page it's on. It shows that it's an adjective. We have the definition already written down. We do this for this class because oftentimes if I were to give them a completely blank worksheet, they would be so overwhelmed that they would be very reluctant to fill it out at all. And so then we give them an opportunity to write down some of the examples or the synonyms. I like this form because all of the words are together. So they have all of the vocabulary words on one place. One of the things I don't like about it is it doesn't give us as many places to write down all of the information. For example, non-examples. It also doesn't give us a place to write down a quote. The students get to choose which they prefer. I like giving students a choice because it helps them decide how their education is going to be determined, how they're going to learn. And I find that both of these forms are used for different reasons by different students. And it's nice because they do have that choice. One of the things that we're going to do with the class as we go through a couple of these examples, then we're going to pair them up and they're going to work together to fill out their graphic organizers. And this way they can work and share and they can teach each other, which I really like. And as they're doing this, I'm going to go around the room and see if they need any help and see if they're understanding what we're actually doing. Once we've finished all of these, the students are going to complete a closed task. A closed task is one where we give them a sentence and they're going to pick, we give them a sentence with one blank in it. We take out the vocabulary word and they're going to choose which word is going to go in that place, which word best fits. For example, what they'll be reading, and they get to do this on a written piece of paper or on a computer program, their choice again. So this will contain the sentence, I continued to hold the door, not liking to appear foolish, yet oddly blank, to open it the rest of the way. Then they'll get to choose between reluctant, eager, and another word, possibly like one of the other vocabulary words like resilient. And this will give them the opportunity to identify the correct word that best fits into that sentence and show that they understand the meaning of the words. Another activity that we do is called Kahoot, and this is where we give the definitions. We write the definition of the word and project it on the board. Then they click in on their phone with their choice of which word fits this definition, and that's where we have the different vocabulary words. These are great exercises for the kids. They enjoy that, and it's fun to participate. I will end the lesson by asking them which way for figuring out the word meanings did they like the best. Was it asking for help? Was it looking it up? Was it rereading it to figure it out? And we're going to talk about that and how they can use this strategy whenever they encounter words they don't know in any of their classes. Then I'm going to encourage them to use one of their new words or some of their new vocabulary words in their everyday speech or in their writing throughout the day. And we'll talk about it again tomorrow to see. Since this class is only 50 minutes long and it takes a long time to transition for these students, this actually is a 2-day exercise. So we're going to finish this exercise on the next day. And encourage them, like I said, to pick one of their new vocabulary words to use as their day. So I think this would complete our activity. We're going to do this for vocabulary words in the chapters in the rest of the book, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Thank you very much.